Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So continuing from where we left last time, we're going to talk about the slipped capital femoral epiphysis. The increased axial force on the femoral head epiphysis displaces when there is increased axial force on the femoral head. Axial means the axial body force, I guess, the center force. So the axial force on the femoral head epiphysis displaces relative to the femoral neck like a scoop of ice cream slipping off a cone. Okay. Classically present in obese more than 12 years old child with hip and knee pain and altered gait, diagnosed via X-ray, and treatment is surgery. So here you can see the slipped capital femoral epiphysis. Since we are talking about epiphysis, so remember that we are right now talking about the people who don't have who have incompletely closed epiphyseal plates whose bones are growing. So we are talking about people like 12 years of age and stuff like that. So the axial portion of the femoral head epiphysis displaces relative to the femoral neck like a scoop of ice cream. Let's see what the difference between epiphysis and metaphysis. Just give me a second here. So epiphysis. So this is the thing that we call epiphysis and metaphysis. The long bone in a child divided into four regions: the diaphysis, shaft, primary ossification center, metaphysis, where the bone flares, physis, or the growth plate, and the epiphysis, that is the secondary ossification center. So if you can see in this picture, so this is diaphysis, the shaft, the main bone. Then we have metaphysis. Metaphysis is the flaring of the bone. So basically where the bone is spreading apart, that is a metaphysis. Then we have epiphysis, like over here, and between metaphysis and epiphysis we have the physis, that is the physial plate, the growth plate. So right now we're saying that the physis is dislocated in not physis, uh, the epiphysis is dislocating. So what is epiphysis? Epiphysis is this area, like beyond the physis. So that area is being displaced in the children who are obese and more than 12 years of age. Okay, so the treatment is surgery. This one is stable, and here it is slipped capital femoral epiphysis. This is unstable. It is not a bone fracture. The physical plate that was a junction over there. That junction is slipped, and that slippage of the junction is called as slipped capital femoral epiphysis. Then moving forward, the next point. So next page is about the Osgood-Schlatter disease or the tibial tubercle apophysitis. Okay, tibial tubercle apophysitis. It is also called as Osgood-Schlatter disease. Overuse injury is secondary to of the secondary ossification center apophysis of the tibial tubercle. So there is a secondary ossification center that is called as apophysis, like epiphysis, metaphysis, but not bad enough. Now we have two apophysis as well. Apophysis. So apophysis is the natural protuberance from a bone or inside shell of exoskeleton, sea urchin, or insect. Okay. So an anatomy process is a projection. So we're talking about a process or a projection that comes out of a bone. That is apophysis. So in the case of tibia, it is tibial tubercle. Okay. Overuse injury of the secondary ossification center of the tibial tubercle, that is called as the Osgood-Schlatter disease or the tibial tubercle apophysitis. The pathology of the injury: the patellar ligament connects the tibia and patella, which in turn is connected to the quadricep muscle, rectus femoris, vastus intermedius, and vastus medialis and vastus lateralis. The quadricep muscle groups. The quadricep muscle group is involved in the leg extension at the knee. Repetitive quadricep contraction, for example, jumping, and chronic avulsion causes the proximal patellar tendon to separate from the tibial tubercle. During the healing process, callus formation causes the tubercle to become elevated and prominent. Occurs in adolescence after the growth spurt, common in running and jumping athletes. Self-limiting, but does not resolve until the growth has halted. Teenage boys 12 to 15 years can have this problem, that is called as Osgood-Schlatter disease. Then we have presentations: progressive anterior knee pain exacerbated by kneeling, okay, like bending on your knees; enlarged tibial tubercle tenderness, insertion site of the patellar ligament, pain on resisted knee extension. X-ray shows irregularities and fragmentation of the tibial tubercle. Avulsion site of the tibial tubercle is over here. If you could zoom it in, so here you can see that this is the site of avulsion of the tibial tubercle, and here is the lesion over here, and the patellar tendon that becomes avulsed from the tibia. Okay, chronic avulsion causes proximal patellar tendon to separate from the tibial tubercle. Okay, In the healing process, the callus formation causes the tubercle to become elevated and prominent. Well, moving forward to the radial head subluxation, that is called as nursemaid's elbow. Radial head. Now we are in the upper limb. So the radial head subluxation. This means that the radius will come out of this annular ligament. That is subluxation. So in the case of subluxation, this is the inverted picture. Like this is the humerus above, and the radii and ulnar below that. So if this comes down from the annular ligament, the radius bone is coming out of the annular ligament. That thing is called as the radial head subluxation or nursemaid's elbow. Common elbow injury in children who are less than 5 years, caused by a sudden pull on the arm. Immature annular ligament slips overhead of the radius. By age 5, the annular ligament becomes thick and strong, decreasing the likelihood that it can be torn or displaced. Injured arm held in the flexed and pronated position. Okay, so injured arm is held. Injured arm, very bad. Injured arm is held in flexed and the pronated position. Reduction can be accomplished by fully supinating the child's forearm, followed by fully flexing the elbow. So you fully supinate the child's arm and then you can supinate. After supinating, you fully flex the child's elbow, so that can cause the reduction. Okay, so here's the nursemaid's elbow. So if somebody pulls on the arm like that of a 5-year-old child or less than 5 years, so it can cause the avulsion, not avulsion per se. It can cause the slippage of the radial head from the annular ligament. You say that the subluxation, yeah, radial head subluxation will be there. It is normal that we have the distal humerus and then we have the capitulum, the annular ligament that is housing the head of the radius and all that. If there is traction downwards, so this head will be subluxated, and annular ligament displacement will be seen. Now annular ligament is between the capitulum and the radial head, so this can cause pain in this region as well. Sign of lumbosacral radiculopathy. Now we are in the lower limb again. Paresthesia and weakness related to specific lumbosacral spinal nerves, usually due to herniated intervertebral discs. Spinal level L3 to L4, weakness of knee extension, decreased patellar reflex. If L3 to L4 level is involved, so there will be decreased patellar reflex. Okay. If L4 to L5 level, I think it is L2 to L4 that is the root value for the patellar reflex. But even if L4 is involved, so patellar reflex will be reduced. L4 to L5, weakness of dorsiflexion, difficulty in heel walking. L5 to S1, weakness of the plantar flexion, difficulty in toe walking, and decreased Achilles reflex. If it is L4 to L5, the heel walking is difficult. If it is L5 to S1, then toe walking is difficult, and there will be a decreased Achilles reflex. We have seen the root values associated with individual nerves, so you may rewind the video able to see them. Then we'll move forward to the neurovascular pairing. So the nerves and arteries are frequently named together by the bones regions in which they are associated. The following are exceptions to the naming convention. Axial and lateral thorax, we have nerve long thoracic nerve, and the artery is lateral thoracic artery. Okay, surgical neck of the humerus. On the surgical neck of the humerus, we have axillary artery, although it is not the part of the axilla anymore, but it is the axillary artery over there. And posterior circumflex axillary nerve and posterior circumflex artery will be there. In the mid shaft of the humerus, we have radial nerve and deep brachial artery. The distal humerus of the cubital fossa, we have median nerve and the brachial artery. The popliteal fossa has tibial nerve and the popliteal artery. While the posterior to medial malleolus, posterior to medial malleolus, we have tibial nerve and posterior tibial artery. Okay, remember the names of the arteries and nerves in relation to the specific artery, specific areas. Then we have a Uworld point. Risk of wrong side surgery can be reduced by requiring dual identifiers, usually a nurse and a physician, to independently confirm that they have the correct pain site and procedure. Checks must be truly independent to ensure the patient's safety, because why is there a need of dual identifiers? Because sometimes the patient came to you because of tendinitis in the maybe right arm, or not even tendinitis. So say that the surgery then was to cause the amputation of the right arm because there was some problem with that, or fasciitis going on in that, and there was lack of this dual identifier thing, and there was no cross checking, and instead of amputating the right arm, you amputated the left arm. That was normal, right? So that is a proper lawsuit against you, and you can lose your license. So to protect your license and to protect the lives of the patient, you have to make dual identifiers available. That firstly you will say you will write the arm or the area where the procedure has to be done, and then you will do an independent dual identifier, like maybe a nurse or someone else, who can identify the pain site, the procedure, and the particular patient. Moving forward to the physiology. Okay, finally we are done with the the gross and dry anatomy of upper and lower limbs. Now we'll talk about physiology. Motor neuron action potential to the muscle contraction. First one is sarcolemma. What is sarcolemma? The plasma membrane of the cell muscles of the muscle cell is called as sarcolemma. So they have made sarcolemma over here. Suppose this is the muscle fiber. Muscle cells are elongated cells. So sarcolemma is the plasma membrane. Lemma is basically membrane. The usual plasma membrane of the cell is called as plasma lemma. So for the muscle cells, it is called as sarcolemma because sarc, S-A-R-C, wherever you see that written, think of the muscle cells and particularly the skeletal muscle cells. Okay, so sarcolemma is the plasma membrane of the muscle cell. Myofibrils, the contractile structure within the muscle cell is called as myofibrils. The contractile structure, you know that there is something like this, there is a V line, and then we have actin fibers attached to that, and the myosin fibers are in between that. So all those things are apparatus that is also called as a sarcomere. That contractile apparatus, the fibers which are constituting that contractile apparatus are myofibrils. The contractile structures within the muscle fibers. Then sarcoplasmic reticulum, intracellular structures similar to the endoplasmic reticulum, important for calcium storage. Now, sarcoplasmic reticulum is just a usual endoplasmic reticulum, but because it is present inside the muscle cells, that is why it is called a sarcoplasmic reticulum. Secondly, there is intracellular structures. Secondly, the speciality of sarcoplasmic reticulum is that it is a very important source of calcium storage. Then we'll talk about T tubules. The T tubules are over here. These are the T tubules, they are very important. So the diagram is very beautiful. I will explain that later on. Invagination of the plasma membrane in contact with the sarcoplasmic reticulum, allowing for the coordinated contraction of the striated muscle. Now that is very important point. I guess there will be some explanation to that later on. But here you can see, suppose that this is the surface of a myofibril, not myofibril, this is the surface of a myocyte. Suppose we are talking about a single cell. So in that particular cell, when the impulse was coming, so impulse was making that was going like that. Okay, let's make it positive. So suppose this is the impulse. To cause the whole muscle to contract simultaneously, the impulses will move through these invaginations or through these invagination of the plasma of the sarcolemma or the cell membrane downwards across the muscle cell, so that the impulses for just moving over the surface should dive deep inside the cells so that hold the muscle contraction coordination with each other. So there are a lot of TTGs, and the function is to cause the impulse to enter. If you look like that, so this impulse is over here. Okay, let me make another impulse. So there is an impulse like that. There is an impulse like that. So this impulse is moving all the way into the muscle fibers, and it's like yeah. So here there is an impulse, then another impulse is over here. So this impulse came here and traveled all the way down here, so that there is coordinated contraction of the muscle fibers. Now let's come back to our discussion. The terminal cistern, sarcoplasmic reticulum near the T tubule, that is called the terminal cistern. This one. So the T tubule is basically in the form of a triad. We see that in the skeletal muscle, one T tubule plus two terminal cisterns make a triad like this. So here you can see that the orange lines, they are sarcoplasmic reticulum. They get tether against the T tubule on both sides. So suppose this is the T tubule. So there are two parallel structures which are basically the processes of the sarcoplasmic reticulum which are surrounding the T tubule from both the sides. That is one T tubule plus two terminal cisterns will make a triad. In the cardiac muscle, there is one T tubule plus one terminal cistern that will make a dyad. Right? For the cardiac muscle, we have a dyad, but for the skeletal muscle, we have a triad. Okay, so that this is the meaning of triad, like 1, 2, and 3. So these three things are making a triad. When we step in the cardiac muscle, we have just a dyad. Component of sarcomeres. The contractile structure of the myofibrils, I guess there's a diagram of that over here. Okay, that's a beautiful diagram. So we'll talk about the sarcomere, defined as the distance between the Z lines. Such a beautiful description. They are saying that this is a Z disc over here and there is a Z disc another. So these two Z lines, I guess they're connected to lines or something, but the distance between these two lines is called like sarcomere, that is Z to Z distance. Coming back to our discussion, actin attaches to the Z line. It contains, Z line is basically the site of attachment of the actin. It contains vimentin and Dutchman, and these are also the lab markers when we are going to talk about some tumor that is originating in the like dermatomyosarcoma, stuff like that, or even in the smooth muscle, not smooth muscle, you may say the what's that thing? Mesenchymal, yeah. The mesenchymal tumors, they are vimentin and desmin positive. And to be very specific, the vimentin and desmin are very particular for the skeletal muscles. So remember that vimentin and desmin are positive for the rhabdomyosarcomas. Tumor marker for the mesothelioma. Okay, there it is. The titin filament connects the myosin to the Z line. Okay, so titin is going to connect the myosin to the Z line, right? So let's see these structures. These are actin, like thin lines are actin filaments. Okay, that's also different diagram. So here you can see that this is the thin line that is actin, that is attached to the Z line, which contains in the Z line we have vimentin and desmin. Now remember this and now forget about it. Now the actin filaments, which are a separate proteinaceous material that is connected or tethered or fixed inside the Z disc. Got it? Now there's this bold line or this thicker line is myosin. This myosin filament is attached to the Z disc via another protein that is called as titin filament. So titin is going to connect the myosin to the Z disc. Now continuing from here, I band, the light band near the Z line, span of actin does not overlap the myosin. So I band is a light band near the Z line, and the span of actin does not overlap the myosin. There is I line is over. This is I band. Okay, so what's I band? I band is the light band near the Z line, and the span of actin that does not overlap the myosin. So it is the I line is visible only when the sarcomere is not contracted, when the muscle is relaxed. So in this particular area, now here you can see that the actin and myosin are overlapping in this zone. Right? All of this zone, the actin and myosin are overlapping, so this zone will appear darker. While in this zone, the one I am highlighting right now on each side of the Z disc, so this zone and a similar zone on this side. So this area is not. In this area, the actin and myosin are not overlapping each other. So this is a lighter zone, and that lighter zone is called as the I band. That is also visible in this picture. I guess this one. This is the I band. So there is no overlap in this area. That is why it's called as an I band. Your eyes can see through it. That's my image. Then M line, myosin attached to M line. M for the myosin. So myosin is attached to the M line. The line in between this is called the M line. This M line is seen over here as well. So the thickened center of the myosin filament is called the M line. You may say that, but the myosin is attached to the M line. Actin is attached to the Z line, while the myosin is attached to the M line. So now the myosin is attached to the M line. A band, span of the myosin is A band. Okay, span of myosin will be the A band, no change in protection. So this thing, like from here to here, there is A band, and during the course of contraction there is no change in that, because other structures will come close to this. They will come close to the A band. Like Z line will move in this direction and come all the way when it tabs with the myosin. So it will stop there, right? So there will be no change in the GL contraction in the A band. The length and the intensity or the density, everything remains same for the A band. Then we have H zone in the center of sarcomere. The H zone is in the center of sarcomere. This zone with H zone. So this is the H band that is in the center of sarcomere. It contains myosin only, no actin. The German is heller, that is brighter, and shrinks with contraction. This is going to shrink with contraction. Now here you can see that this is a darker zone. Why is it dark? Because there is actin myosin overlap over here. This is the dark zone that I was highlighting or referring to. The H band, the H band or the heller band, that is the band that contains only myosin. So it is from here to here. It is lighter in comparison to the area of overlap. So remember that this area, like from here to here, the A band, that is the myosin containing area. But in the peripheries of the myosin containing area, the A band, we have a darker line, while in the center we have lighter lines. So the darker line is the area of active myosin overlap, right? While the M line, which is in the center, not M line, while the H zone, which is in the center, this H zone, that is the lighter zone because there are only myosin filaments, there is no overlap. That is why it is lighter in comparison to the overlapping area, but it is still darker in comparison to the area where the active filaments are alone, right? Now, whenever the sarcomere contracts, so the actin filaments will move towards the center, that is M line. So when these actin filaments will move towards the center, that is the M line, so the overlap area will be increasing. When the overlapping area will be increasing, resultantly the darker area will be increasing and the lighter area will be fading out. So that is why we say that the H zone changes with the contraction. The H zone will change with the contraction, while the A band will not change, because A band is the myosin containing area. The length of A band is constant, right? The length of myosin filament is not changing at all. The thing that is changing is the H zone, that is the lighter zone within the myosin filaments, that will be changed during the course of contraction. That will be decreased in the contraction while it will be increasing the relaxation. We will see that dynamics later on. So right now, let's revise these things like this was well of an information. The Z line is the area where the active filaments will attach. Okay, so then we make it clear and paint the picture. So this is the Z line I'm talking about, the Z disk. It is the area that is made itself of the bimental and decimal and the site where the acting filaments will attach, right? So let's take a screenshot of this one and fix it over there. I guess it's enough. So here you can see. Now, right now I'm talking about the Z line. So Z line attaches to the, okay, so this is the Z line to the acting filament will be attached, made up of bimental and decimal, right? And timing filaments will cause the attachment of myosin, this myosin, to this Z line. Okay, and what is I band? I band is the area, I band, this is the area between around the two Z discs, which is a lighter tone. Your eyes can see through it because there are only actin filaments over there is no myosin present in the I band, right? The light band near the Z line and span of actin does not overlap with the myosin. Then what is M line? M line is the area to which the myosin filaments are attached. The central line, that is M line, myosin attached to the M line, and for myosin. What is A band? A band is the total span of the myosin filaments. A band is the span of myosin in the A band. No change to the contraction. So A band will not change during the contraction. What is H zone? H zone is a lighter zone inside the inside these thick fibers. That light zone is the area where the active myosin is not overlapping for the time being, right? It is in the center of sarcomere. Myosin only, no active. Heller is a German word for the writer. If you remember a writer, there was Heller, there was Helen Keller. Sorry, it's not about that. So Heller, there is writer, and shrink with the contraction. So it is going to shrink with the contraction and it will expand with the relaxation. So this is the point. Then we'll find out. So these are the important structures. Remember about all of them because they are highly asked on concepts. They can ask you about that. And they can most of the time they give you the diagram like this. So here you can see that the Z line is over here. Okay, this is the Z line and this is the Z line. Then this is the area. Suppose I'm drawing the actin filaments with red. So these are the active filaments like this and this, and the actin filaments are also present over here. Just like this, and the myosin filaments, let us draw it with a different color, maybe purple. So these are the myosin filaments like this. Okay, they're not visible now. So yellow. Yeah. So these are the myosin filaments like this, and over here, and over here. So the myosin filaments, okay, no, like that. Here myosin filaments. So here you can see that the area where the actin and myosin are overlapping with each other, that is the darker zone, right? And the area where they're not overlapping, that is the lighter zone. So the total span, this total span is the A band. Like that's A band, while the area in the center, there is a lighter zone that is called as the H band. Then we have the I band, where there are only actin filaments, and the lightest zone is sarcomere. You may also say that here the actin filaments are present only, like this and this and this. Okay, I band. In the center of the M line, in the center of the H, in the center of sarcomere, the centermost structure of the sarcomere, you may say that, or you may say that in the center of H line, or in the center of the A band, there is a line that is called as the M line, to which the myosins are attached. So I band, only actins, A band, myosin throughout it, through the thorospan of the myosin, dash band, only myosin without actin, and then we have some myofilaments, actin, and the thick myofilaments with the myosin. Remember these structures. Now let's move forward. Actin filaments are anchored onto the V line of the sarcomere. The V line lies in the center of the lucent. In the center of the lucent region, referred to as I band. So this is the I band, and in the center of this lucent region, we have the V line. The dark line. The dark line. This dark line in the center of the lucent region is the V line. You have to remember this point because they ask you about this V line in the Uworld questions and in the step 1 exam. The mnemonic. An interesting zoo must have animals. Actin is in the I band attached to the Z line. So actin is in the I band attached to the Z line. And interesting zoo means actin is in the I band and that is attached to the Z line. Myosin is in the H band attached to the M line. Myosin is in the H band attached to the M line. So must have animals. An interesting zoo must have animals. Although I'm very against the zoo structures, but for an interesting zoo to be, they must have mammals. So this is a good mnemonic. An interesting zoo, like actin inserts into the V line while the myosin attaches to the H line. Myosin attaches the M line in the H zone, and actin is attached to the V line in the I zone. By the way, it is easy concept, and you don't need any money for that. But if you need one, so you can use it. What is muscle contraction sequence? How does the muscle contract? That is action potential coupling the no, no. So muscle contraction sequence, that is action potential, opens the presynaptic voltage gated calcium channels, inducing acetylcholine release. Now we are in the presynaptic nerve terminal. So we're right now talking about the nerve terminal. In the nerve terminal, this is the sequence, like thorough sequence. Okay, we'll come to this picture. Okay, so the thorough sequence is whenever the action potential comes, like action potential impulse is coming, and so there's an impulse that is coming all the way over here and over here, and then impulse came all the way to the presynaptic terminal. So the presynaptic terminal, at the presynaptic terminal, this impulse will cause the opening of the calcium channels. The calcium channels which are opening from here, they will cause the calcium influx, and that influx of the calcium will cause the binding of the acetylcholine vesicles to the presynaptic membrane, and those vesicles will cause the release of acetylcholine, which we'll see in the second point. Then moving forward to the next point, they are saying that post-synaptic acetylcholine receptor. Okay, the post-synaptic acetylcholine binding leads to the muscle cell depolarization at the motor end plate. Now, when I'm talking about the nerve or the muscle, so these are all the somatic motor fibers. They are all motor neurons. They are somatic fibers, and the target organ is always a muscle end plate. Like the skeletal muscle is going to be the target organ for this sequence, right? The one I'm talking about. I guess the skeletal muscle also has the same sequences, but for right now, I'm talking about the neuromuscular junctions. Okay, so this is the post-synaptic acetylcholine binding lead to the muscle cell depolarization at the motor end plate. So when the acetylcholine will be released from here, so this is acetylcholine that is being released. There is acetylcholine that has been released. It will bind to the acetylcholine receptors, which are the nicotinic type of receptors, which are channels, the sodium channels. So these acetylcholine receptors, they will bind the acetylcholine with them, and then the action potential will spread across the sarcolemma of the myocytes. Now here you can see the sarcolemma is traveling down the tubule as well, but we'll see that in the next point. So coming back to our discussion, the depolarization travels over the entire muscle. So the depolarization travels across the entire muscle cell and deep into the muscle via the T tubules. So this is the function of T tubule, as you can see in this picture now. So the action potential, or these arrows are depicting the spread of the action potential across the cell membranes. So that spread is going deep into the T tubule, so that the whole muscle fiber can be contracted simultaneously. Coming back, the membrane depolarization induces conformational change in the voltage sensitive dihydropyridine receptor DHPR and its mechanically coupled ranoline receptor RR lead to calcium release. Membrane depolarization induces the conformational change in the voltage sensitive dihydropyridine receptor and its mechanically coupled ranoline receptor, okay, that will lead to the calcium release from the sarcoplasmic reticulum into the cytoplasm. So let's talk about these two receptors first, and then we'll go to the diagram. So dihydropyridine receptor proteins that span the gap between the T tubule and sarcoplasmic reticulum. These are the proteins that span the gap between the T tubule and the sarcoplasmic reticulum. I would like to take your attention back to this picture where we saw a triad. That is, this is T tubule, and these two are sarcoplasmic reticulum. So now the dihydropyridine receptors, they are the proteins that span the gap between the T tubule and the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So one end of these dihydropyridine receptor will be situated on the surface or the sarcolemma within the tubule, and they will be spanning the gap. As you can see that they are connected to the calcium receptors, the ranoline receptors on the surface of sarcoplasmic reticulum. So there are two different receptors. Dihydropyridine receptors are on the T tubule, while the what that is, the ranoline receptor. So ranoline receptor is present on the surface of sarcoplasmic reticulum. So these are going to connect. These two are going to be connected. Coming back to our picture, so dihydropyridine receptor proteins that span the gap between the T tubule and sarcoplasmic reticulum bind the dihydropyridine drugs. Amlodipine is dihydropyridine calcium channel blocker because it has dihydropyridine ring, although it has no effect on the skeletal muscles. It opens the ranoline receptor on the terminal cisternae. That is going to open the ranoline receptor on the terminal cisternae. SARCA, that is sarcoplasmic reticulum calcium ATPases, transfer the calcium from the cytosol back to the endoplasmic reticulum. It uses ATP. Okay, that is sarcoplasmic reticulum calcium ATPase, that is SARCA. It transfers the calcium from the cytosol back to the endoplasmic reticulum, and it uses ATP for that. Okay, got it. Then tropomyosin. Tropomyosin is blocking the myosin binding site for actin filament. Okay, so let's see if there's a picture of that tropomyosin. There must be a picture. Okay, there is a tropomyosin picture. Okay, let's come back. So tropomyosin is blocking the myosin binding site of the actin filament, the least calcium binds to the troponin C, TN and C, shifting the tropomyosin to expose the myosin binding sites. The tropomyosin is a thin filament that regulates the skeletal muscle contraction. So what is the function of tropomyosin? Here you can see the green one. Okay. This green structure over the actin filament, these things, these beads are of the actin beads, so they are actin filaments. Over the actin filaments, we have tropomyosin, which is covering the site of myosin attachment. These black dots are basically the sites where the myosin is supposed to be binding. So if a green line is covering them, myosin cannot bind to that. So to remove the tropomyosin from these binding sites, we have calcium receptors, or you may not say them calcium receptor, the troponin C molecule, the troponin C, the trimeric complex. So the troponin C will bind the calcium, and that troponin C, which is attached to the tropomyosin, will cause the conformational change in the structure of tropomyosin to dissociate or to remove it from the myosin binding sites, and then the myosin binding heads can bind myosin binding site. So the cross bridge can be found, myosin can bind to these sites, blah blah blah. So coming back to our discussion, yes, so over here, okay. So tropomyosin is a thin filament that regulates the skeletal muscle contraction. The myosin head binds strongly to actin, forming a cross bridge. Phosphate PI is then free phosphate. Phosphate is then released, initiating the power stroke. Okay, that will release from the ATP, then we convert it to ADP. During the power stroke, the force is produced and myosin pulls on the actin filament. Muscle shortening occurs with the shortening of H and I band and Z lines. So here's shrinkage. H band is a lighter zone. I band is the H band is a zone with only myosin, and I band is a zone with only actin. Since the actin and myosin overlap is there, so both the zones are supposed to be contracted, and Z lines will come close together. The A band remains the same in length. A band is always the same in length, and ADP is released at the end of the power stroke. Okay, binding of the new ATP molecule causes detachment of the. So that is very important point. That to cause the detachment of myosin from the actin, we need a new ATP. Binding of the new ATP molecule causes the detachment of myosin head from the actin filament, and calcium is resequestered. ATP hydrolysis into ADP plus phosphate result in the myosin head returning to its high energy position, that is cocked position. The myosin head can bind to a new site of actin to form a cross bridge if calcium remains unavailable. If calcium remains available. So if the calcium is still there and the contraction is still, the impulse is still coming, so we have been supposed to contract the muscle further. So in that case, if the calcium is available, the myosin head can bind to the new site of actin to form a cross bridge. So now here you can see that is a very beautiful. There are a lot of beautiful animations which you can see, but if I could make one, so here you can see, we'll use this one. Yeah. Okay. So we'll use the whole picture and then we'll go to the next page. Here you can see that this is a myelin sheath and this is a presynaptic neuron. In the presynaptic neuron, the impulse came like these arrows, and they caused the opening of the calcium channel. The calcium entered and the acetylcholine vesicle, they were released. The acetylcholine is released basically, and that got attached to the acetylcholine receptor on the motor end plate of the muscles, that is called the muscular junction. Okay, on the muscular end plate, the acetylcholine, after binding, opened the sodium channels in the muscle, and that caused the impulse to be transmitted throughout the sarcolemma into the T tubules, and then inside the T tubules, we know that sarcoplasmic reticulum, sarcomere is also present across that. The impulse that is present, that is passing across the sarcoplasmic across the sarcolemma in areas other than this T tubule, that is also performing the same action. It is actually easy to explain with this one, that is why we are explaining this. But the impulse that is the impulse that is coming to this direction, that will also cause the opening of the calcium channel through the sarcoplasmic reticulum, that is spread across the myofiber layer. So now we're saying that inside the T tubule, the dihydropyridine receptors, they are tethered against the ryanodine receptors on the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So when they will be stimulated, they will cause the opening of the ryanodine receptors, and the calcium will be removed from the sarcoplasmic reticulum into the cytoplasm. Calcium is entering the cytoplasm. After entering the cytoplasm, there is contractile filaments, the sarcomere, the whole structure which we explained in the previous slide or the previous picture, that is present inside the cytoplasm. Now when the calcium is in the cytoplasm, that is going to do some heavy things. Like it is going to cause we know that there is a structure that is called as tropomyosin. Tropomyosin is present over the actin filaments, and that is not going to allow the myosin to bind to the actin filaments. Now, when the tropomyosin is being removed from the actin binding sites, from the myosin binding sites in actin, so the contraction can occur. So to do that, the troponin complex is present, which will bind to the calcium and will change the conformation of tropomyosin. Now the actin filaments are actin binding sites for the myosin are free, and the myosin will bind to them. Now it is ADP plus phosphate, like a complete ATP is present. As soon as the binding occurs, a phosphate is released, and the power stroke occurs. Like the this is, you can say that this was the resting position. This contractile position is the stretched position of the Martian. The Martian is contracted. The Martian contraction occurs. Then we need another ATP to cause the detachment and bring it back to the cock position so that it can pull further. So one by one, like one bead at a time, and there is not only one head, there are a lot of heads. So every head will pull one actin filament or one actin bead forward, and this cycle repeats so that the whole length of the actin filament is moved towards the center or towards the M line. I hope I could clear the concept. Going forward here, you can see that this is the actin filament. Calcium will bind the propanol C. Tropomyosin move out of the binding group. Tropomyosin moves out of the binding group, and that leads to myosin power stroke on the thick filament. Myosin binds the ATP, and myosin head is cocked. That will cause the ATP to be spread down to ADP, and that also helps in the myosin power stroke. So these are two dynamics on the thin and thick filament that help in the myosin power stroke. Here you can see that we have the sarcoplasmic reticulum calcium ATPases. That sarcoplasmic reticulum calcium ATPase, after the power stroke is over and after the muscle contraction is no more there, it causes the active uptake of the calcium inside the sarcoplasmic reticulum, so that ATP is broken down into ADP. Okay. Then we have type of proponent. So there are three types of proponent. Proponent complex is like a trimeric protein. So proponent complex, proponent C binds to the calcium. Okay. Proponent D binds to tropomyosin, and proponent I inhibits the myosin binding pathway. So there are three structures, like you can say like 1, 2, and okay. So these are the structures 1 to 3, like 1, 2, and the third one is on top of all of them. They are going to bind to the calcium. So this third will bind to the calcium. Okay. So the calcium is going to bind to this one over here. Calcium will come and bind to this structure over here, and proponent C will bind calcium. Proponent T will bind the tropomyosin, the filament, the elastic filament that was covering the actin filaments. So proponent T, and then proponent I is going to inhibit the binding of myosin to that. Then malignant hyperthermia. So malignant hyperthermia, dangerous reaction of to anesthetics, may be halothane or maybe okay. So it can either be halothane or can be succinylcholine, caused by the abnormal ranodine receptor, which are autosomal dominant. What? It is an autosomal dominant kind of disease in which there are abnormal ranodine receptors present inside the person. So now in that person who had abnormal ranodine receptor, without screening, without a proper history, without any further details, which were asked from the patient, if we gave them halothane or maybe succinylcholine as an inhaled anesthetic, so there will be excessive calcium release, consumption of the ATP for the sarcoplasmic reticulum to reuptake the calcium by SERCA, ATP consumption. Okay, so excessive calcium release, if there is excessive calcium release, so there must be excessive calcium reuptake as well. So the calcium reuptake is being happening there, so there will be excessive ATP breakdown, as we saw in this picture, that ATP is broken down wherever the calcium is entering the cell, and I guess same thing happens when it is leaving the cell. Give me a second. SERCA. Okay, transfer the calcium from cytosol back to the endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, so it is the transfer of the calcium back to the sarcoplasmic reticulum which requires the ATP. So if the calcium is released excessively because of abnormal ranodine receptor, the SERCA one has to perform a lot more effort to bring that calcium back. If a lot of ATP breakdown is happening, so a lot of ATP consumption will produce heat, and that will lead to tissue damage. Muscle damage will cause increase in keratin kinase and increase in potassium release into the circulation and in the serum. These two molecules can be detected. Fever and muscle rigidity after surgery, and you have to use dantrolene, that is the receptor ranodine receptor antagonist, which blocks the release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum and reduces the calcium in the cytoplasm for contraction, that is skeletal muscle relaxation. So the dantrolene ranodine receptor antagonist, it blocks the release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum and it reduces the calcium into the cytoplasm for contraction, that is skeletal muscle relaxant. Dantrolene can act as a skeletal muscle relaxant. Now we'll talk about the types of skeletal muscle fibers. So there are two main types of skeletal muscle fibers. There is a very enormous kind of detail associated with that. I will try to bring the table for you of that. Okay, so type 1 muscle, slow twitch. Okay, the type 1 muscle fibers are slow twitch fibers. Red fibers resulting from increased mitochondria and myoglobin concentration. These are red fibers, slow twitch fibers, type 1 fibers. They result from increased mitochondria and myoglobin concentration. That is why they appear red. Increased oxidative phosphorylation is happening in the slow twitch type of fibers. They resist the fatigue. Perform sustained contraction of the postural maintenance. For example, the paraspinal muscles. Think one slow red oaks. Proportion is proportion increases with endurance training. So if you're doing the endurance training, like you're doing the excessive plank activity or you're doing the core training and stuff like that. So with the endurance training, like you're doing the running, like you're running for like hours. So that type of endurance training will increase the number of type 1 muscles which can contract for a longer time, which can sustain the contraction, like the postural maintenance, the paraspinal muscle, stuff like that. So you remember like one slow red ox. Then we have type 2 muscle, that is fast twitch fibers, white fibers resulting from decreased mitochondria and myoglobin. They're not white per se, but they're not as red as the type 1 muscle fibers. Okay, so mitochondria, the less number of mitochondria and myoglobin concentration and have increased glycogen storage, that is increased anaerobic glycolysis. For example, the eye muscle, many fast twitch fibers are present inside the eye. Proportion increases when we are doing a weight or resistance training or sprinting. Okay, so sprinting is over here, it's not over there. Think of any other endurance training in the type 1. And for type 2, when you're doing sprinting or the weight lifting and stuff like that, so then you get the, so you lift your, suppose that you are doing the, you are lifting the barbell. So to lift the barbell, you have to use both of your arms, right? Both of the arms are used simultaneously for that. So the type 2 fibers are used in the weight or resistance training, and they are white fibers, and they are decreased mitochondria and myoglobin, because you can't do that for you can't do more than 12 reps or 15, because you tired early, because the type 2 fibers have low number of mitochondria and myoglobin, and they are fast twitch as well. So they are fast twitch fibers, while the type 1 muscle fibers are slow twitch fibers. The postural maintenance, like the muscle of your spine, the paraspinal muscle, which help you stand. You can stand for like days, not days. You can stand for like hours. So if you're standing for hours in a row, so that is because of the paraspinal muscle, which are slow twitch type of fibers, and that they can sustain the contraction. Okay, moving forward, we are going to talk about the cardiac muscles. The cardiac muscle, many similarities with the skeletal muscles. Okay, cardiac muscles. Okay, they're like very similar to the skeletal muscle. They are striated, sarcomeres for the contraction, actin and myosin. Okay, they contain actin and myosin, troponin and tropomyosin as well. The TTP and sarcoplasmic reticulum. So all of these things are like very similar to the skeletal muscle, that they have striated. They have striated fibers, which are sarcomeres. They use sarcomere for the contraction. Actin and myosin are present, and troponin and tropomyosin also present. The TTP and sarcoplasmic reticulum are also present. So all of them are like very similarities. The skeletal muscle. What are the differences? The difference is that there will be a dyad in contrast to a triad, which is present in the skeletal muscle. What is the dyad? One TTP for one terminal system. Depolarization spreads from cell to cell by a gap junction. While in this case, there was only one long cell, and the impulse was transmitted through the TTPs. The gap junctions are not present in the skeletal muscle, but they are present in the cardiac muscle. We see the gap junction, the concept of gap junctions over here. Calcium influx via L-type calcium channels. Okay. Also dihydropyridine receptors. Low affinity for dihydropyridine calcium channel blockers, amlodipine. So L-type calcium channels, they have low affinity for the dihydropyridine type of calcium channels, for example amlodipine. I guess the verapamil is going to work on the heart, while the dihydropyridine calcium channel blockers are not going to act on the heart, like amlodipine. That are a weaker activity in the heart. High affinity for the non-dihydropyridine, for example CCB like verapamil. Calcium influx from outside the cell through these channels trigger the sarcoplasmic reticulum calcium release by ryanodine receptors. That is calcium triggered calcium release. What's that? Calcium influx. So basically, remember that in the calcium influx from outside the cell through these channels trigger the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Okay. So how the heart muscles are contracting? They are contracting in a way that the calcium channels will open. So the opening of the calcium channel will bring the calcium inside the cell. Then calcium that is entering the cell will stimulate the ryanodine receptor to open, and further calcium release will be there. So that is calcium mediated calcium release. Okay, calcium triggered calcium release will be there. What is lusitropy? Myocardial relaxation. That is because we hear about different concepts like inotropy and the chronotropy and the chromotropy and the dromotropy and whatnot. The lusitropy is something that is not different most often. So the myocardial relaxation is called the lusitropy, mediated by SERCA, which is sarcoplasmic reticulum and calcium ATPase, because it brings the calcium back into the sarcoplasmic reticulum. SERCA is regulated by a protein called phosphodiesterase phospholamban, phospholamban, okay, PLB, phospholamban. Phospholamban is an inhibitor to SERCA. Okay, sympathetic stimulation phosphorylates the PLB. There will be decrease in PLB and increase in SERCA, so there will be decreased contractility of the heart. No, not decreased contractility. The phospholamban will be decreased, SERCA will increase, faster relaxation lead to faster contraction. Okay, why the contraction is increasing? Because the relaxation time is fast. The diastole is decreased. Oh, this is the concept. So you know that when the sympathetic supply is there, the from the cardiac cycle, the diastolic time shrinks down. And the molecular mechanism of the shrinkage of the diastolic time is that sympathetic stimulation will phosphorylate the phospholamban, PLB. That PLB is decreased. If that is decreased, or the activity of the PLB is decreased, that will increase the activity of SERCA, because PLB normally causes the inhibition of SERCA activity. If the PLB is decreased, so SERCA activity will be increased. And SERCA activity increase and SERCA activity will lead to a faster relaxation, which can make the heart ready for a further contraction. So faster relaxation leads to faster contraction, and this is the mechanism of increased systolic duration and decreased diastolic duration during the sympathetic overactivity. So you can see we have a cardiac muscle, and the calcium is entering the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and the calcium when enters the cell. Actually, I'm kind of confused about that, because for the normal myocytes, like non-pacemaker myocytes, the action potential is triggered by the sodium influx. So that is why I don't want to comment on that. But suppose if it is a pacemaker cell, then the pacemaker cell, but that doesn't make any sense to me. So even the action potential that is triggered by the sodium, that is also supposed to open the calcium channel during the plateau phase. So suppose this is the action potential that was triggered by the sodium, but then the calcium plateau phase was there, and then potassium. So the calcium which is moving inside the cell, we'll see the detail of that later on. So when the calcium that is moving inside the cell, that will act on the renin receptor of the sarcoplasmic reticulum to cause the release of calcium. That calcium release will result in contraction, right? Now, due to sympathetic stimulation, the sympathetic stimulation, maybe there was norepinephrine that was released and that was acting on the beta 1 type of receptor. So these beta 1 receptors will stimulate the adenylate cyclase. Adenylate cyclase will convert the ATP into cyclic AMP. That cyclic AMP will phosphorylate to stimulate the protein kinase A, and that protein kinase A will cause the further opening of the calcium channel. Say that. So further opening of calcium channel is there, more calcium is coming. On top of that, the phospholamban is inhibited, and SERCA come out of inhibition, and increased SERCA activity will do the calcium uptake, so that the calcium can come back into the cell in the next contractile cycle. So the faster relaxation lead to faster contraction. The beta 1 receptor linked to GS protein increase CAMP, increase calcium, and increase contractility, right? So there's a pictorial representation. We'll see this diagram. So firstly, point number 1 is action potential enters from the adjacent cell. So from the adjacent cell, this is what's that. Okay, this is sarcoplasmic reticulum, but I guess they have made of this is the right picture. Okay, so the T tubules are present in the cells, like in the cardiomyocytes. The T tubules are present, but from cell to cell transfer impulses taking place by the gap junctions. So number 1 is action potential enter the adjacent cells. Okay, from the adjacent cell, suppose there were gap junctions like this. Okay, here are the gap junctions, and a lot of gap junctions are present, like over here and over here, and there's another gap junction, not over there but over here. So gap junctions are the connection between the cells. Okay, so suppose we have the gap junctions, and these gap junctions which are connecting the cells together, they are causing the impulse from this cell, that was neighboring cell, from the neighboring cell. Suppose we had a cell over here, it looks something like this, and this, and this, and this, and this is it. So the impulse that was present in this cell, because of the presence of calcium in the cytoplasm, the calcium sneaked into the other cell by the gap junctions, and now the impulse has entered the neighboring cell as well. Now this impulse that has entered the cell, sodium and calcium both are sneaking inside. So this impulse that is traveled from the neighboring cell will cause an action potential to be triggered in this. In this myocyte number 2, is the voltage gated calcium channels open, the calcium enter the cell. So it will cause the opening of the voltage gated calcium channel. As you can see in this second point, that the calcium channels are opening when the impulse is entering. The calcium induces the calcium release through the renin receptor channel. The calcium mediated calcium release is occurring from the renin receptor. So calcium from the cytoplasmic reticulum will also start entering the cytoplasm. Then point number 4 is there will be a calcium spark. What does that mean? Local release of calcium is called calcium spark. Then there is excessive calcium release, or you may say calcium surge or whatever, stuff like that, whatever word you want to use. There will be excess of calcium in the cytoplasm. Then in point number 5, we can see that some calcium spark create a calcium signal. like a lot of calcium from a lot of different impulses and a lot of sarcoplasmic reticulum which is present inside the cell, they will be clustered together to cause a summed calcium spark. And point number 6, that is calcium ion binds to the troponin to initiate the contraction. Calcium ion binds to the troponin to initiate the contraction. Then point number 7, relaxation occurs when the calcium unbinds the troponin. So when the calcium unbinds the troponin, so there will be relaxation. Point number 8, calcium is pumped back into the sarcoplasmic reticulum by the circa. Okay, that requires ATP as well. And this is the mechanism. Here you can see that when the calcium is being pumped into the calcium, okay, there is no link here. We discussed that previously. Suppose it is a skeletal muscle and the calcium is being pumped into the sarcoplasmic reticulum, so that requires ATP. If the ryanodine receptor, which was responsible for the release of calcium into the cytoplasm, is abnormal and there is excessive release, so there must be an excessive uptake as well. So if there is excessive uptake, so there will be excessive consumption of ATP, and that ATP consumption leads to production of abnormally high amount of heat that is called as malignant hyperthermia that occurs in the patients who have an autosomal dominant type of ryanodine receptor deficiency or abnormality. And whenever they are given the inhaled anesthetics like halothane, succinylcholine, they may develop malignant hyperthermia. That is not linked in this topic, but I just saw this and I was provoked to tell you about that. Then point number 9, that is calcium is exchanged with sodium. So calcium is exchanged with the sodium, or the calcium that is present inside the cell, that is exchanged with sodium on the surface of the cell. There is calcium sodium exchanger, and the sodium gradient is maintained by sodium potassium ATPase. Okay, so we have a drug that blocks this thing that is called as digoxin. So if the sodium calcium digoxin is acting directly on that, right? Okay, forget about digoxin. I've confused. I'm sorry. No digoxin. So this is sodium calcium exchanger, and then the sodium potassium ATPase. Sodium will leave the cell and potassium will come inside. The excessive sodium that came out for the calcium efflux, that will be removed by sodium potassium ATPase, and the gradient will be maintained for the further impulse conduction. So we'll keep the section till here. Until then, Allah Hafiz and Fi Manla, and take care.